You're now live.
We are live and we are back. We had a couple of things we wanted to talk about. The first one was the executive director. And at first we said, yeah, that's fine. We can, the governor can appoint him. But then we got into, so how does that function? Because as written, the executive director is an employee of the department. Now he'd be serve at the pleasure of the first question was who can fire him. Serves at the pleasure of the governor, but how does that work with the board in their ability to control the agenda? And we had originally left out the governor's direct line to the executive director because we were concerned about some donor maybe, calling up and saying, geez, my cousin or I need, and can you get your board or your director to get some grants our way? We were trying to keep, and the normal course, in my experience, is that a board does hire the executive director. Because it's the board that's setting the work plan, that's setting the goals, that's setting, and the executive director carries it out. And we seem to be having some chain of command issues with this, and just, Randy or Chris, I'll leave it to you if I didn't get that. I think that's what our issue.
We were concerned about the chain of command, to really understand what the chain of command was. In a way, if you have the governor being the person who appoints the executive director, you've got all these intermediate pieces in there in which he is an employee of the department on the one hand, and then the language says that essentially he follows the orders of the board, and just appears to have sort of an inherent conflict as you do that.
And I will say that from the House bill, when we were working on the Vermont Community Broadband Authority, that was how it worked there. The board was appointed by the governor and other folks, and the board itself hired the executive director. So we had gone through that thinking process as well.
It's part of the thought process that I also had was one of the things I think we're trying to drive is accountability. The governor wanted to be in charge, but at the same time, the governor has to be, the people who the governor appoints need to be accountable for the results to somebody. And so that also was a concern of who can fire him and under what circumstances. If you have a board that can only be fired for cause, which is the way it reads, what do we mean by cause? I mean, stealing the money would be for cause. Doing a lousy job and not getting broadband built to me is more important. And I'm unclear as to whether they could be fired for that.
So you've heard our wrestling. One notion, and it'd be too formal to call it a proposal, but what if we kept the chair appointed by the governor, kept the executive director appointed by the governor, but then made it very clear that the executive director comes under the board in terms of that. So we're trying to, basically have the accountability and the independence, but have it also kind of hang together and be a little less tortured. And maybe, dare we say, streamlined, because we've come to believe that the independence of the board is very important. But also we want voters to kind of have a clear answer when people are running for governor. And so anyway, this is an attempt to come just try to address it. I don't know if we get there.
So I'm just going to dangerously think out loud for a minute. Personally, and I'm not speaking for the House conferees, personally, the reason why I was more enamored of the idea of the governor appointing the executive director is purely as to what the next 6 months looks like.
Yeah.
And I think the governor is going to have an easier time hiring an executive director than appointing a board of 5 that's maybe never worked together before, and then tasking them with the process of doing a search and collectively hiring an executive director. I think that's a tall order. So just the
Quickly,
executive
especially-
power behind the governor of being able to do that out of the gate. But as you just described it, Senator Pearson, I'm also concerned about, again, kind of the circuitous lines of authority or accountability. And, the executive director should be accountable to the board, and the board should,
We could have him hired by the administration, the governor, but once hired and the board is appointed, that he works at the pleasure of the board, or can only be dismissed at the pleasure of the board. It's an odd construct, but it is. I think the board had to be up and running in August or September 1st. And I was questioning whether or not that was enough time to interview and re-interview and find somebody. If you don't find somebody the first time, you've got to go out again. So, I mean, some of those, I think it took us almost a year to hire a new director at FESAC, because we were very picky.
Yeah,
So-
I will also say that one of the things is that, I think the House conferees talked about collectively is, and I heard this in what you were describing, kind of a concern about, I'll call it the politicization of some of this work, which we don't view as political at all, and concern that, whether it's a governor or frankly, whether it's a legislature that are, subjected to a lot of political forces, whereas we want this to be, very subjective work. And Chris, as Senator Pearson, I agree with your point too. We want accountability, and ultimately the governor's accountable to voters. If this isn't working, that there's something to be spoken to there.
And I guess that, I'm thinking about the, 3, probably closer to 400 voters who are working so diligently, trying to fix this problem on a volunteer basis for us, and doing so admirably, who I'm sure are going to hold all of us accountable if we get this wrong, including the governor. So
I mean, couldn't we have the governor, because of the time and the importance, hire the executive director, who then would be accountable to the board and would work. We went through this with the lawyer. Remember, we told the commissioner she could hire a lawyer, and she was saying she'd need one, especially if she needed to transfer assets. But eventually the lawyer would come to work for the board. And I think we just set up, you're going to transfer. If you don't work out with them, you don't work out with them.
So at the risk of splitting the baby, what if the governor makes the initial hire for the executive director, who is accountable to the board and thereafter hired by the board?
That works.
And what about the chair?
I really feel like the chair, this board should be able to determine, who would be best able to lead.
Truly, what are the powers of the chair?
Call the
Other than
meeting,
being-
Call the meeting.
got a big gavel.
Yeah, I also think we're,
You feeling powerful today, Representative Brickle?
Yeah, exactly. The chair has no power. I can speak from experience.
Oh,
So much.
okay,
Well, if the governor has the ability to hire the chair, he doesn't have the ability to, if we did that, he doesn't have the ability to get rid of the chair except for cause.
I think that's. Yeah,
I don't know if that's the case. I think when you make an appointment to the board, that appointee serves out their term.
well, a
Yeah.
term, yeah.
That's the term though, but I mean, you can't get rid of him just before
Until the
election
term's up.
out if there's no other specific cause.
I'm not sure the governor would consider not voting the way he wants you to vote to not be cause.
Perhaps.
I mean, that's
Oh,
why
no.
we pay lawyers the big bucks.
Right.
Can we agree that the governor will do the initial appointment of an executive director who will, once appointed, work for the board, be their chief administrative officer?
Administrative officer.
and everything else? Okay,
And then I would leave the appointment the way it is. As we started out the discussion, it was one or the other, and I would leave the chair as the appointee of the governor.
okay. That's
And
fine.
So chair, appointee of the governor, and the initial executive director appointed by the governor, and subsequent executive directors hired by the board.
And the executive director, even the one appointed by the governor, once the board is up, works for the board.
Could be fired. Yeah, I guess actually, if you pair that with the replacement belongs to the board, that becomes powerful. But it also does help us with our time problem, which is one of the reasons why we want the governor to make that initial appointment. I
Because
think
you're
that's
gonna, yeah, and we have an election every 2 years. This board is going, and I think we saw that with the VTA. There was a change of administration, and you want this board to be independent and be stable and not have the governor, a new governor come in and decide, well, I don't like these guys, and so I'm unappointing everybody, and we're going to start over, because this is too technical to start over with a good portion of your board.
Well, what I will say, and I'm not being paid by the governor to say this, but what I will say on behalf of this governor is the plans that the governor has put out through his Department of Public Service have certainly been ones that have been supportive of directing funding to CUDs.
Oh, yeah. I don't, and I doubt that that's going to change unless 2 years from now, we find out that it's been a boondoggle. And then everybody will be running for cover, but that's life. Okay, I think we're agreed on that. And
Can you play back for me, Ann, what we're agreed upon?
I think we are agreed that the governor will appoint the initial executive director who will serve as the chief administrative officer and at the pleasure of the board. If there are subsequent executive directors, they will be appointed by the board. Everybody, and the chair of the board will be one of the governor's appointees.
And the board has the power to hire and fire the executive director.
Yes,
Yes.
the board has the power to hire and fire.
Okay.
Now, I don't know that we need to state that the director is an employee of the department. That came out of the old modeling after the
Clean
because,
Energy Development Fund.
yeah, because he's not being paid by the department. His costs are being paid by the funds.
From an administrative standpoint, I think I didn't get clarity to the point that I can articulate it here, but I think that works with the executive director of CDIF being an independent person, but technically an employee of the department.
Yep. No, it works. That's why we started with that model. We've heard from that person.
Well, and the fact that he serves in the legislature kind of proves that it works, right?
So I don't know if there was more that you all discussed in your Zoom room huddle. We had been working through some wording things with Maria, and
Okay.
then but hadn't finished.
We had one other thing.
I beg your pardon.
Okay, that was the page 21, the overbuild language. And this came to us from Irv Tomei. And I think it just added the word incidentally. And we weren't, I think why this went in as an issue is we've got limited funds and we didn't want CUDs overbuilding, have it be their business plan to overbuild a community that's already served, rather than they can go through that community to get out to unserved people. But we were trying to, and that's where the word incidentally came from. They weren't building downtown where people were adequately served. They were just going through to get to the unserved. And initially, I don't think we ever thought of that as disadvantaging CUDs. We don't care if they sign people up as they're incidentally going through, or if they do a neighborhood that's not served. It was the trying to keep the new money kind of pure and not use it.
As I was looking at this language, I was hearing from as many people who were opposed to it as people who are in support of it. And it wasn't clear to me what it added and what it was, essentially what it was trying to solve for.
Okay, well, that's what we thought we were solving.
This is not, I would say this is not something that I think we're going to die on the hill for. It didn't seem to be additive, frankly.
No, I think overbuilding is allowed. I think all of our large providers who keep begging us not to overbuild them also spend hundreds of millions of dollars to keep in place the regulatory system that regulates them through competition, which would, of course, include overbuilding. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of double speak here.
Well, and I would say fundamentally, I don't think any CUD wants to overbuild. It's expensive, it's inefficient, it's definitely not something you want to do. That said, anything that precludes overbuilding, which fundamentally has the intention of getting to unserved and underserved folks that we haven't been able to get to because of the donut hole issue. Again, this feels like a problem that doesn't need to be solved, but.
All right, committee. I think we all want to do the same thing. Senator Pearson?
Yeah, I'm a little more pro overbuild than maybe the rest of my conferees. So, the original language, I'm not wed to this language. I think we want to be careful to make it clear we're prioritizing the totally unserved, but I don't want it. Here's my worry. When a CUD has got to go through town, overbuilding, to get to the edge of town, because they need to connect the south and they need to connect the north, and central is already there. It doesn't, I would hate to see this, and I think the original language is more restrictive in this way. When they're going through town, it doesn't bother me if they sprinkle the neighborhood a little bit, if it's incidental to the actual project. And the original language sort of said you can only do it if it's, if you kind of have to. So maybe we're actually trying to arrive at different goals here, but I don't mind if people get a little competition as they're going past, but somehow we're trying to express that the grant priority needs to be the part of town with no service. But if it boosts your business plan as you pass through town, by all means hit those 10 streets.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if this is in there, I don't think terribly bad things will happen. Overbuilding is not prohibited.
Right. No,
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, could we do a better job with the wording if we're all kind of around the same area?
I think we're close. When I first read the word and still, the word incidental is like, well, I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure. Is it? I've not seen it as a kind of a legal term. So that's what I just didn't know what it meant at all the first time I saw it on paper, and now I understand what it means. I'm not sure someone else reading it would immediately know what that means.
okay.
And I agree. In some of our discussion, if you look at and this repeats itself throughout Washington County and beyond. Route 12 runs north-south in town and pretty much divides the town in half. And the only way to string fiber to get everybody in Worcester would be to run right along two main village roads and cross Route 12. So if you started building out from there in all different directions, maybe that's not something that would necessarily be funded. But if that line has to run right through the middle of the village across Route 12 to get from the east to the west side of town, then it's going to be going right past a number of people's homes. So why wouldn't you see if those people wanted to sign up? So I agree with that. I just if there was a better word than incidental, it'd be great. But I don't want to get hung up on this either.
Okay.
All saying the same thing once again.
We can do this. We can do this.
Find the right word. This is
I don't think
this is a new TV show.
I don't think this is a big deal to keep in.
No.
As I said, I think our priority would, or our preference would not to keep it in, but in the grand scheme of things, I think there are opinions on both sides of this, and I don't think it does harm. So
Fine.
why don't we close the door on that one?
Okay.
Good.
So I think we're back to your wording. Is that?
Yes. So and this is what Senator Pearson had asked earlier. What I'm hoping is the last thing that we would need to do to kind of come to a vote as a conference committee is for us to work with Maria to put some of these words in, which again, I don't think are substantive in terms of affecting, some of the things we've talked about today. And what I will tell you is when you guys were in your Zoom huddle, Representative Pat alerted me that there was one of those things that I had failed to bring up before. So I want to take you to that,
Okay.
which is on page 14. This is in the it's in the powers of the board section. It's on my page 14. It's capital I. And this was the language that Senator Pierce wanted to have in on the contract for comprehensive statewide fiber optic engineering design, which is fine. We wanted a little language in there that says, if you do this, it will not slow down the build. that you don't basically say, oh, we're gonna go do a design study. Why don't we put things on ice for 2 years? That
Yeah, no,
going to do this is fine, but it can't preclude moving forward with construction grants.
Yep.
I didn't think that would be controversial.
no, don't think so.
Okay,
Oh, God, so brutal.
so
Good
so
catch.
then I think our task is to work with Maria on those final wording things that we've
Okay.
described, and then come back and hopefully go through those, and then
Here's
hopefully have
Maria.
a vote.
Okay, so you want to do that this evening or early tomorrow morning?
Well,
I'm looking at Maria and her
yeah, I don't
Saturday.
want to presume what Maria's evening plan is, but maybe it's safest. I don't know what your morning schedule looks like. I'm happy to do it tonight, but I don't want to call people out for your evening plans.
I'm available. Health and Welfare's got some joint meeting with Judiciary on a bill Health and Welfare doesn't have possession of. And I've already told them I couldn't guarantee I'd be there. So I'm free.
I've got an 8:30 committee meeting tomorrow
Does
morning.
And we have a 9
I'm
o'clock
gonna,
committee meeting.
all right.
Seven,
What
7 or
about
whatever is fine with me.
Maria? Do you have any availability tonight?
Yeah.
Like at 7:30?
I don't think it'll take long to work with Maria on these wording changes. I mean, I think they're all handfuls of words. It's
Okay. I mean, can you think you can get it done in a half an hour, 2 hours?
Is there
I
a
would say
lot?
certainly an hour, and that might give you a chance to grab some food. Do you want to reconvene at 8?
Sure.
Or
And I'm guessing this will
7:30 or
take
whatever?
a half an hour with Maria, and then we can take a break and just reconvene, read through this, and hopefully put this to bed.
End of the session. If I got home before 10 and the end of the session, I was happy.
Well, you're home before 10.
I am. Now I'd like to get out of home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does 8 o'clock work for people? Reconvene
Yes.
at 8? Okay.
Okay, we will see you, Faith. Can you do that?
I can do that.
Okay.
Fine. I'll send you an appointment shortly and I'll end live stream now.